Welcome to the session Mentoring the Mentors panel. And the first thing we'd like to do is just introduce ourselves briefly, where we came from and our relationship to the program. And then I'll continue on with a little bit more of a history of what the program is and when it started. And we'll move on to talking specifically about our own experiences and open up for questions and things. So I'm Chris Tudge. I'm an associate professor in the biology department. I'm also currently the faculty director for the honors program, and I have been a mentor in the Partners in Teaching program in CAS since its inception, which, as I'll tell you in a minute, it was, I think, in 2014 that started. So.
Hi, I'm Heather McDonald. I'm in the Department of Literature and the Writing Studies program, and I've been a mentor in the program for the past 2 years now.
And I'm Noemí, Enchautegui, professor and lecturer in psychology, and I was a mentee when it started in 2014.
Okay, so this was a program instigated by Peter Starr and CAS and Noemí Barron as director of CTRL back in 2014, when I think the college was looking into issues of mentorship for faculty, and this was a pilot program that was started then. And Peter was very clear when he established it that it wasn't going to be a punishment program. You weren't sent to mentoring, right, because you couldn't perform. He wanted it to be a program that faculty were volunteering to be part of and were eager to be part of. It was initially started gathering a bunch of faculty, both term and tenure track faculty, who volunteered to be mentors, and then a call went out to all of the CAS faculty asking anyone who would like to be mentored. And then the program paired up particular mentees. I think it was usually 2 per faculty member for the mentors, and that mentoring went on for a year, over 2 semesters. And now we're entering, if it runs again, I guess, it will be for, this will be the 5th year, start of the 5th year. It still works along those lines. Mentees apply to the program. I think we always have more mentees than we have mentors, and so some people do not get in at particular times. I don't know how the mentees were designated for particular mentors. I'm a term faculty, and I tend to get a lot more term faculty. And being a science person, I've also always had at least one science faculty. But I know that that's I don't think it's a conscious effort to make sure that there's discipline to discipline, because as we're going to talk about today, there's a lot of advantages in having cross-disciplinary mentorship going on. Couple of things I wanted to also come up with. There was no guidelines developed for either mentees or mentors. It was very much a customize it as you wanted program. So, for example, whenever I met with my mentees, we discussed when we wanted to meet, how often, the activities we wanted to do. There was no designation of you must do a classroom visit, you must meet once a month, or anything like that. It was very much a customizable program, and I think that's one of the benefits of this. And you could have as much or as little contact between the mentee and the mentor as you wanted, or you could enable. It was something that was, the mentorship was really set up specifically for teaching and pedagogy, but as you all know, it inevitably went, the mentorship conversations went over into career, even time management, life interaction, home life and work life interactions, and things like that. So it inevitably is broader, but it was specifically a program set up for teaching and pedagogy mentorship. As I said, because of you sometimes got people within your discipline as a mentee or mentor or not, there was a lot of diversity in the types of mentorship that was being offered. So someone in your discipline, for example, you might be able to talk very specifically about, for example, teaching science labs with somebody if you're also somebody who teaches science labs. But if you've got somebody who's outside of your discipline, then there's much broader conversations about general classroom structure and function. And like I said, even you're also a parent with 2 small children. How do you manage your workload with your home life and issues like that? I think that covers everything I wanted to cover for the history of the program and sort of how it was initially set up to run. And it hasn't changed very much in the 4 years. I think we still have a number of mentors, each with 2 mentees, and there's a lot of diversity. I forgot to mention there's both tenure and tenure term and tenure faculty who are mentors, and I believe there's also term and tenure who are mentees, so it's a mixture of those there as well. Anything you wanted to add to the intro part of it before we move into each of our experiences? No? Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I'll speak to my experience as a mentee first, and then they can talk about it as mentors. So when the call came out to apply, I was very happy to get in the program. Like Chris said, it didn't feel like punishment, it felt like an opportunity. I enjoyed very much the opportunity to have a mentor in this program in this way. If anything, I would like it to be like multi-year, not just the 1 year. It was great to use the person as a sounding board for ideas for the classroom, to ask about so many things. I think Chris mentioned, for instance, not only classroom issues or pedagogical issues, but even your career and your life and how do you manage or how do you balance these different things. So I will disclose that Chris was my mentor during that year. And so, as he said, it's a different discipline. I'm in psychology, but in the side that is more of the social science aspect of psychology, not the natural science. So we were in a way more across disciplines, right? But still, there were so many ways in which I could benefit from his experience and his insight. At the time, I remember I was teaching a very small class in which I only had 7 students, and some of them were graduate students, some of them were undergrad. And I was telling Chris, I don't know how to manage the differences in the dynamics. Like some of them are so confident because they're grad students and they feel more confident talking, and the undergrads didn't so much. So Chris gave me some great ideas on activities or exercises to pull in different skill levels and expertise levels that they brought to the classroom, and it worked really nicely. So things like that I really appreciated, having somebody else who could give you insight into what you can do in the classroom. Something that we didn't do that now I wish we could have thought about was having Chris come to the class. We didn't think of that at the time. But now, looking back, I think that would have been very helpful to have, and if not Chris, somebody else who might have, he had suggested that could have come to the class and helped with some of the things that you can capture by observing a colleague. So in the future, I think that would be something nice that mentees could benefit from, especially if there is that trusting relationship with the mentor, which I felt with Chris at the time. We were talking yesterday about this, and I think there have been different ideas on bringing people to your classroom so that they can evaluate you and observe. But I think this should be perhaps a preliminary step. The first step is to have somebody who you really trust and you feel that will be there to help you in the process of developing your teaching skills. And I think this would be a good model to do that, to have this mentor come in. So we didn't do that. So that's one of the things that now I would, we didn't come up with this idea at the time. And then so the classroom dynamics was a big piece for me that I wanted to understand better. Also assessments and things like that. And so some of the questions I had, some of this, I think Chris referred me to a colleague. I can't remember now exactly how that went. But part of it is because some of the things I was asking about were not necessarily things that you mentioned that you do in biology. So some of the issues about some essay questions or things like that were probably not in that wheelhouse. So it's good to think of that, like who could be someone the mentor can refer you to. That could be helpful. And the last piece that I benefited from was that Chris was a parent as well. And there were some dynamics and issues that I felt sometimes spilled over from home into my work life that I wasn't sure how to manage or bring up with my superior in my department, in my chair. How to respond to some demands from my department so that I could balance work and life. And so Chris was very firm in suggesting, not only because he's a parent, but also as a term faculty member, I think it was good to know how he felt I could approach some of these issues as a term faculty member. So that was really beneficial to me as well. I think for now, this would be my experience to share, and I'll have more if you have other questions.
I just wanted to put in, I handed out some index cards, and if you want them, they're here. If you think of any questions while someone's speaking, but we're happy to take questions sort of after every small break that we have, so you don't have to wait until the very end. If you've got a question that's pertinent to something that's just been said, please speak up. We're happy to halt things as we're going along in that regard. So, but if you, while someone's speaking, that card's there just to help you. Oh, I must remember to ask this question. So just sketch it down. There's some down here, and there's pens here if you can bring a pen with you. Did you want?
Why don't you?
I was going. Okay. I've been a term faculty here for 18 years now, and I came in when term faculty were really quite a minority on campus, and the conditions for term faculty have drastically changed in those 18 years. And I'm very happy to say that things are much better for term faculty, and I think the relationships between term faculty, the administration, that's your chairs and above, and term faculty and tenure faculty have come forward great strides. So I did have a unique term faculty perspective, and I particularly feel that I have an important role to mentor term faculty. But at the same time, being here 18 years, I have many tenured faculty colleagues on campus who I interact with a lot, and I also can bring that experience as well with that. So I enjoyed it, being able to expand my horizons, and I want to also make a very clear point that I was every time I was a mentor, I was also learning, because you always learn something new, and that it's always a two-way street. You know, being here 18 years, you get stuck in your ways sometimes. Somebody new turns up on campus, and they've got these great ideas, and you think, "Oh my gosh, that is fantastic! I should be doing that too." So it's always a two-way street in this regard, and so I've learned something from every single one of my mentees in every year that I've been involved in the program, which is why I keep volunteering to be involved. It keeps me a little more active and at the front of my teaching as well. And another great thing is that with some of this stuff, once you've been here a while, you get stuck in particular types of teaching that you do. For example, in biology, one of my bread and butter courses is a large gen ed class of 150 students, and I've been teaching that for 10 years now, each semester, twice a year, and you get a little stuck in that rut, and it's good to get some new ideas for that. But it also means that I can talk to my mentees about teaching gen ed classes, which can have particular challenges to them, and larger gen ed classes as well. But I've also taught graduate students in the department, so that's always a unique experience. Small classes, less than 10, highly motivated, graduate or upper level majors is a very different teaching experience than teaching a gen ed class that's got some numbers in it. So the idea that there are different classroom types, different classroom audiences, formats, sizes, that once you've been here for a certain amount of time, you tend to have taught nearly under all those formats. And you may have absolutely bombed it the first time you did it, which a lot of people do, and that's totally expected. And then you learn, and then you've got some experience to be able to pass on to somebody else. And I particularly feel that for new incoming faculty, those first couple of years struggling with the workload that may have come from a non-teaching position, postdoc or research, and it can really be a struggle to find your feet and find your place in the classroom and your role in the classroom. And so I think that having somebody who has some experience in that diversity of classroom settings can be, I hope it's a stable point that they have, in that, at least for a year. And also, I have kept in contact with all of my mentees past at that point, and I've always said to them, this relationship doesn't end when the program ends, and I see them across campus all the time. And the first question is always, how's the classes going? What are you doing now? Are they treating you better? Those sort of conversations are always ongoing, and so I think it's helping new faculty to develop connections across campus, and help them to settle into campus a little faster. But also, some of my mentees have not been new faculty. They've been faculty who have been here for 4, 5, 6 years, and we're struggling with particular issues in the classroom. We have a new type of student in the last few years. The new generations of students that come on campus are very different to what we were teaching 18 years ago. And so some of the faculty are having trouble with some of the issues that are with the newer generations of students that are coming in. And I know that I'm one of those faculty who's struggling with some of those things, and so I really appreciate interactions with other faculty. And often it's the newer, younger faculty who have more experience with that. And so it's always that two-way street in regard to that mentorship role. And I've had a diversity of mentees. Of course, this is within CAS, and so one of the things we want to talk about today when we get to the discussion is we'd like this to be a model that could possibly be used outside of CAS and maybe expanded to other colleges and campus-wide. So, yeah.
Since you said we can ask questions,
Yes, certainly.
I'm going to go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Mindy McWilliams. I'm from Georgetown University, and a few of us were invited by Anna to come. So I'm very delighted to be here. We feel very welcome, so thank you. We don't have a program like this for faculty, as far as I know. I work at the teaching center, and so I would be interested in hearing from some of you as you go through your stories, what the roles were organizationally, perhaps what you benefited from that the teaching center provided structurally or organizationally. And I think you mentioned it was in partnership with someone else at the university, and I don't know which unit or who
that was the people who organized this, the Center for Teaching, Research and Learning. Yes, certainly, because Laura was one of the instigators.
I'm Laura White from
We can blame her.
Sciences, and I was on the committee that originally set this up.
the program.
So it was, it came out of conversations that we were having about mentoring on another committee that I was on at the time, the Dean's Advisory Committee. And the Dean had made it a strategic priority for the year to improve processes and policies around mentoring in the college. And I'm also a term faculty member, so I don't know if you are familiar with the structure that we have at AU.
I just assume it's similar to ours, in that if there's
Contractual,
non-tenure
yeah. There's lots of different names for them, contractual, term.
Yeah. And so we were, as Chris said, the situation around term contract faculty has changed a lot at AU. And we've moved more into a structure whereby these are, our provost calls them career track positions, not tenure track, but career track. And so what we wanted to bring attention to initially was that so much of the conversations we were having around faculty mentoring were about getting people tenured and were about research mentoring. And we had this whole category of faculty that was growing, where the majority of what we would be evaluated on was teaching. And how could we create a structure that would support real mentoring for real mentoring needs, as opposed to thinking about mentoring as a kind of, not so much an afterthought, but adding it onto a structure that already existed that didn't meet the needs of all faculty. So we prioritized working with the Center for Teaching, Research and Learning for one reason, which was they had money available. And we knew that if we were going to really get this off the ground, we needed some resources. But they were also really, really excited to participate. And I don't know why we haven't gained traction on this, but we've got support from the Provost's office, support from the Dean of Academic Affairs to try to expand this model across campus. So the one thing that I would say is that we had a lot of debates and discussions about structuring this as mentoring. And one of the reasons that we decided to call it the Partners in Teaching program is because a lot of faculty have had either bad experiences or just a general bad impression about mentoring. So a lot of people kind of write off mentoring and will say, oh, I don't need mentoring, or isn't that paternalistic to tell people that they need to be mentored? And so I think Chris's points about learning from this experience, and I served as the faculty coordinator for the first year of the program, and then I also served as a mentor the second year. And I learned so much from not only working with the other mentors, but working with the partners. So that's why we call it partners in teaching, because the idea is that both the quote unquote mentor and mentee are actually partners in this relationship. And I just hope that it's something that we can expand across campus, because as we're hearing, it's been really, really positive.
And a couple of things about the logistics. CTRL coordinates the assigning the voluntary mentors and the assigning of the mentees. They organize a meeting of everybody at the beginning of each semester, and they've also tried to facilitate group meetings of everybody together. But once you get more than 3 or 4 people in the same room at the same time through the semester, it is increasingly difficult. And they also provided lunch vouchers for us to be able to take for the mentors to be able to take the mentees out to have at least one free lunch that semester on campus. So they did facilitate a lot of those sorts of structures. Yeah. So there's a question back there.
And so this program is for term faculty and tenure faculty?
Correct.
Yes.
Or for everybody?
Any faculty.
Any faculty?
Full-time.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Any full-time
Any
faculty.
full-time?
Yeah.
And you sign up at the beginning of the semester? How does it
Yeah,
work?
there was an email that would go out to all full-time faculty
In the
at the
spring.
beginning, in the spring for the
Yes.
year.
Okay,
uh,
so you sign
saying,
up for the
This is the program, this is how it works, sign up for it, and then there was usually, as far as I know, more signatories as mentees than they had mentors, and so not everybody got to be part of that program.
So initially it was over the summer that process started, and we realized that it was too late, because a lot of the mentors would say after the first semester, oh, if only we had started earlier and we could have made some changes to that syllabus, that could have made a huge difference in that course.
So can you talk about the application period? Like what is the application like? And you had said like that, there's sometimes more mentees than mentors. So like how do you decide, like, is there criteria of like the mentee that you look for?
Well, I know, Lauren, you might want to speak to that, and then you were one of the few people who's actually,
But that was so many years
well, that was the
ago.
very first one as well. I know it's
Do
evolved.
you have some?
I have the domains of teaching here now.
Yes.
And also email and posted.
So I can talk a little bit about that, but.
Application at the time, this was 2014, was basically an email to my chair to say, I'm interested.
Okay.
So I don't know if now they have anything more
The
formal.
program has grown a lot since then. At that point, we were like, are we gonna have enough people to actually get this off the ground? Whereas now, the momentum has grown.
I think you might be able to find last year's application on the CTRL website. Or if you just Google CAS CTRL Partners in Teaching. I don't think it's a particularly extensive application. It's not like you have to provide a ton of materials and do that kind of thing. I think the most extensive part is the domains of faculty teaching questionnaire, which you didn't see it or you want a hard copy, I have it right here.
And what was it originally called when it first came out? It was,
I think it was Partners in Teaching.
no, the survey. It was called,
The domains.
it was called Domains of Teaching, where it was a brief survey of questions. What issues do you consider to be low priority, medium priority, or high priority?
And so some
Just
of
the questions.
the discussion I had, because I came on late the previous year, I think because of the summer scheduling, and I heard from Marilyn, who was like, hi, can you do this? And you'd be like, sure. I think, I can get this to stay, there we go. Some of it is, as a mentor, I was asked, what would I be interested in talking about, or what did I think were my strengths with regard to some of these topics? And it's not that the interests of the 2 mentees that I was assigned last year necessarily align perfectly, but I get a copy of what their survey looks like, so I can see kind of what they're interested in. And I think in terms of the administration of the program, as you had mentioned that we get together a couple times throughout the semester as a whole program, And in those cases, it's really nice to have a space to say, if your assigned mentor isn't, particularly comfortable talking about, I'm thinking of technology in the classroom, someone else in the room, whether it's a mentor or a mentee, is immediately going to jump up and say, oh, I can help you with that, let's talk afterwards. So it does even go beyond just the person-to-person relationship, but to have these group spaces in which to talk about very specific things related to what happens in the classroom or how classroom is affecting life. I think that's really, really important. And that's been very useful. As a mentor, and I hope to my mentees as well.
And I would think that that's something that definitely should remain, because we didn't have that the first year. We didn't have the group space. And so that's why Chris and I would talk about, okay, so how else can we go and find that information? Like, who can we speak to? And so that would be a great space for me.
I think one thing that's kind of important to note too is, as Lauren was addressing kind of how CAS kind of dealt with this, or how it kind of came to be. I don't know if this is true across the university, but CAS now requires faculty within their full-time faculty within their first 3 years to have an assigned mentor in the program. And I think different programs in different.
And not in the partners in teaching program, in their own.
In their own department,
In the unit.
in the unit,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. Unit, that's important.
That would be new hires for new hires.
New hires, yeah. And so I, for a long time, have been doing that in my own program, in the writing studies program, because since we teach required classes and we are trying to meet certain learning outcomes, and we have probably 45 people full-time and adjunct right now, we have to try to have a really cohesive program. So I've had mentors for several years now within that discipline, and the system there is very, very different. And I think the system for each unit and the way they address that is probably more formal, less formal. I know in some other departments, the unit-specific mentoring is very geared towards, here's how to balance research and teaching, here's how to balance going up for your tenure review, and those kinds of things, not necessarily what's happening in the classroom. And there's something that I've gotten a lot out of doing disciplinary specific mentoring. There's something that is much more, I guess, relaxed and kind of creative in a lot of ways about talking with someone else in a different discipline about how they deal with the exact same things that I'm seeing in my classroom, or how others are seeing it, and kind of the different techniques that they've used that kind of surpass the disciplinary topics themselves. And so it's kind of the flip side of, okay, we got to work on how to run an effective lab. I know last year one of my mentees was, she really wanted to talk about how in her assignment she was trying to figure out ways to get her students to write better. And I was like, well, actually, I can help you, or try to help you with that. And so it was interesting to kind of do some cross-pollination of how she could do that within her field, within her own pedagogical needs, as opposed to feeling like she had to teach an entirely different topic. And so that was really interesting to see play out.
And that was by design. So when we were having a bunch of committee meetings setting up the program, we spent several hours brainstorming this domain of faculty teaching with both administrators, staff members from CTRL, and faculty who were teaching across different departments. And we had big debates about how we were going to set the relationships up. And we really focused on the idea that it would be beneficial to have a partnership with somebody who was in a totally different department.
Yeah.
Now a lot of it depends on what somebody wants to work on. And sometimes if it's lab teaching, it makes sense to have another person in the sciences, or if it's writing, another person who focuses on those skill areas. But we also envisioned, in the grand scheme of things, like down the road, that this could hopefully affect a culture change around how we think about developing our skills in teaching. We talked about having sort of master with this term,
Master mentors.
who would sort of volunteer to be on a list to say, if anybody on campus needs help with this, they can come to me, I'll take them out to lunch and have an hour-long conversation about it. And we're not really there yet, we're still sort of building momentum, but that's sort of the ultimate.
And that's still a topic of conversation that came up in the last kind of group meeting about having people who were like, if you need to talk about gen eds, if you need to talk about, you know, grad students, if you need to talk about this, having kind of point people, at least within the program, maybe not university-wide yet.
Well, the idea was that we could also have a system whereby people didn't have to necessarily commit for the whole year. But if they're having a problem with a particular assignment in their class, you know, they need to sort of like crisis mentoring, right? You could go to somebody for a, you know, one-off meeting and get some help.
Like a mentoring hotline.
Mentoring hotline, exactly. Teaching mentor hotline.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. You haven't really had your talk yet, if you want.
So I think some of what I wanted to say is kind of looking at that kind of disciplinary versus kind of more open interdisciplinary approach. One of the things that I think is that I've been thinking about a lot, at least, in that because I see first-year students almost exclusively, because I'm a teacher required class, and that's my bread and butter right there, is that in being able to talk about what happens next with those students, I feel like I get a better sense of what's happening at the university. And I think one of the things that I'm really interested in seeing whether the program could go full university and potentially between or among schools, not just within different or among departments in a particular school, is really seeing how that can, again, kind of strengthen a potential paradigm shift of how not just mentoring is viewed, but how we approach teaching, especially within light of the university's incoming student policies, the RISE initiative, AUX, and all of these things that AU is trying to do to improve the student experience, especially in the first few years. I think having CTRL as that point and having that outside the school organizer has been key. CTRL already provides an immense amount of support to faculty who ask for it, and they offer events, and the website is a goldmine of materials that you can kind of adapt to your own needs. But I think having that actual physical space a couple of times a month and having people pair you with someone that you've never met before, it really starts to build bridges among different departments in a way that I think sometimes is really easily avoided, not necessarily out of any sort of deliberate action, but because of the size of the university, because that we're all kind of siloed and like have our blinders on in our own teaching and research.
One other thing about the partnership with CTRL was that we were trying to envision how to expand the resources available to people who are participating in the program. And CTRL was looking for ways to bring other constituencies to the resources that they were building. So it was kind of a natural connection to say, you know, we are, and I actually think that this partnership is what launched some of the amazing, like the impetus to get all the amazing resources that are on the website now up there. We started thinking about linking with the programming that CTRL was offering on an annual basis and tailoring some of that programming to what people were requesting in looking for teaching mentoring. So I think it became a kind of symbiotic relationship in a way that worked really well.
And I think it's something that's happened too is, as with my opening statement about the Dean Starr wanting faculty to know that this was not something that was like, you know, punitive, you're a bad teacher, go there. CTRL had a bit of a reputation for that amongst standing faculty as well. So we don't need to go to CTRL, it's like remedial teaching, right? And that's completely changed. There's been a complete paradigm shift in that, and that now it's faculty are like, CTRL is full of resources, and I know I can go there to get the help that I need. And I think that's happened definitely since the program's been around in the last 4 or 5 years, and I think that's an important change that's occurred. I think institution-wide.
If you haven't looked at the 10 takeaways page on the CTRL website, it's amazing. I was just looking at it last night because we're hiring a new adjunct, and I was like, oh, what's on here? I was like, I need that. I need that. I want to learn about that. And it's really, it's well done and very robust.
Questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say that's sort of the end of our presentations here. So we wanted to open up the rest of the time for discussions and questions. And one of the activities we thought we might do is do what we call a pair and share. So find somebody next to you or move to somebody next to you. And we were going to ask you to do a little exercise where discuss one thing that you're confident about in the classroom with your teaching, and discuss that with the person, your pair, and one issue that you have a concern of in the classroom. And each of you share those, and we'll spend, this break for a few minutes to do that, and find somebody and chat a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about some of the things that came up in that conversation. So if you're not next to somebody, move to somebody, please, and start that brief conversation. For a few minutes. Thank you.
Oh, we get to know each other really well.
Yes, yeah.
This is a good thing. I consider this a good thing.
Yeah, you and I wrote about it. So.
Yeah, I consider it good too. Obviously, I have reactions, but create dialogue, discussions, to create a really engaging classroom experience.
Yeah.
Where I'm less confident is how much technology we use. Right now, but I use it as a guidance.
Right.
So that I
To
can,
facilitate what you're already doing.
so I can present it more as a discussion rather than a lecture. Because I don't feel that environment, a generation of shifts that are radical. Traditional classroom lecture,
And that's what the hour is.
and being weirdos.
I agree.
That just doesn't work anymore. Something doesn't do that. So students love the fact that I'm not I can control my slides. I allow laptops in the classroom, and they can take notes directly in. What I struggle with is, I do I hear what other colleagues talk about laptops. And I think that's where it's best. It's really being how can I possibly take that?
Yeah, I think that's something that I express. One of my strengths is technology, but I've also really been thinking about sort of my use of technology too. Because I use a lot of technology, but I still have areas I use technology I want to accomplish more. And actually never to allow this. I read enough research that says that it doesn't work. And one thing that I think I've is to be I guess when I thought of what I would be, I used to be I've actively been trying to break it up into smaller pieces and have, the idea of I can get real value out of without even reading. And I talked to one of the questions is that sometimes there's value in having just the technology part, but maybe just right? Or just bringing opening the door to technology. Opening the door to technology. Or is right in yeah. You know, like a good example. Rather than always so I sort of I ended up just looking on figure out the projector and putting giving them and then I took this on them to do the blackboard, right? So they put the notes down there. But that last week, I was all here's the way we go back and forth. So you know what to write. Microdynamics inside. Just check time now.
Right. So if tech time shop, that makes sense. So I can see that.
And actually, I think it's always been what's the end goal? So that's exactly what I was saying. There is no worse thing to get in a low class and write questions for your final practice. That video. What's the
about teaching on a laptop, writing out, having worked in
yeah. Yes. Right.
Right. So I'm okay laptop, right? I'm not missing anything.
For accuracy. Zero is the goal of
For accuracy, you bring facilitating agents so that I'm more engaged, looking students in the eye, talking to them, using what's on the board as correct, as the spot, as opposed to looking down, not looking at that. So more active engagement, but where I go from here and how much time I want to devote to it. I have like where in the classroom where it's associated with experience a lot of experience online all the time. I hate how much practice goes into work like that. Spend that time figuring it out. Podcasts, I've done a lot more online. I think podcasts are
my last podcast for general. Yes.
All right. So, would anybody like to share some of your discussions? I mean, this is essentially what we do in a lot of our events. So, like, I think sometimes it is scary to say, like, I am really concerned about this in my classroom. However, this is what we do. So, what do you think you're doing well? What are you concerned about? Like, what did your partner share about their experience with both of those things?
Anybody? All right.
So Cameron and I both teach in the same department, and we teach a lot of the same courses, so we were going that way. And we talked a lot about providing effective feedback to students, how much we're struggling with that. How, back in the day when we were students, your professors would write comments on your work, you would read them, you would take them seriously, and you would do what they told you. Whereas now we feel like either we're spending a lot of time providing feedback that students actually aren't reading yours until you're
Oh, so I had a student, I had a TA for a class called Do the Right Thing that I teach, which is a sort of 100 level ethics class. And I had a TA, and the TA gave the student a B, but the paper was full of comments, and the student sort of went into a panic about the B, and sent all of us repeated emails about how this could have come to be and how she deserved this or that. So she ended up meeting with the TA, and then I met with her and said, yeah, has this been resolved? Like, are you okay? Do you understand? She said, oh, it was much clearer once I read the comments. And said, you could have saved us all and yourself like the potential heart attack if you would have just. First of all, B is also not a bad grade. Just so she failed the assignment, right? She got a B, but that is the equivalent now of the F. So other than an A, I don't know.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Put a 24 or 48 hour rule in your syllabus, as in, once I pass materials back, I'm happy to answer any questions or talk to you about anything. 24 to 48 hours, whatever you think is appropriate. Some people do 72.
Sure.
Until you've read the comments so that we're prepared to talk, especially if you are someone that gives extensive feedback.
Yeah.
And that has made a huge difference, because then when they come to my office 48 hours later, they say, well, I don't know what I did wrong. And I'm like,
it's all in the it's all in the comments and more.
And at that point, because they've had time, I do not hesitate to say, okay, then you can go in the hallway and read them, and then we'll talk. And that tends to shift things for most students. Let's say that.
I mean, they actually come to your office hours and say, oh, I haven't read the comments?
Yes. And I just smile and I say, then you can go read them right now in the hallway while I see someone else.
So how did you exactly phrase that on your syllabus?
Do you want me to post the language on the site?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is, I mean, I make a joke of it on the first day as we're going over the syllabus, and I say, I understand. You see a grade that you don't like, you panic. Most professors spend a lot of time trying to give feedback that is useful, that helps teach you what you're not doing effectively. So we need you to read the comments, because that's as important as being in class, really. And you know, they get it. Like, once I throw it out there, I'm like, no, I don't want to see you in my office 5 minutes after I pass back a 10-page paper with like 500 plus words of comments on your writing. Like, come on. So they tend to get it pretty quickly if you like make a slight joke out of it, but then also hold them accountable. So I'll put the language on there.
Anyone else like to share?
I want to do a parenthesis about the syllabus, because this has come up in other sessions and meetings about first-year students who may not be so familiar with the procedures of college. And so they may need some guidance at the beginning, explaining this is how things work here in this particular class. Look at the syllabus, this is how you should read a syllabus, this is what this means. So there may be another step required that is helping students figure that out, that the syllabus is telling them a lot.
I feel like I'm hoping that programs like AUX and other things are doing a lot of that.
We're hoping
that more of that kind of, here's how to college. I know teaching freshmen, that is probably most of my fall semester. I mean, so much for comments, like, let's talk about study skills and how to not cry when you get a paper back, and okay, let's talk about these things. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one thing through mentoring, is when you get someone who has only had grad students or upper level students and is tearing their hair out over first years, perfectly reasonable response some days, but it's a different student, and you can't treat them the same way. Just like if I got a class of grad students today, I would immediately be calling someone and being like, I don't understand, they're not 18, like, please help me. So I think those are things that come up in our mentoring conversations, like how big those shifts even in a year can be. Yeah. Anyone else, either concerns or things like you've been really happy with? I mean, I think that's just as important.
I want to say, I didn't talk with Bill about this at all, but your comments just reminded me of something. Last semester, I filed the greatest number of care reports that I've ever filed. Does everyone know what a care, in our system, a care report is if something's happening with a student that's going on either psychologically or issues outside of academics, or even if there's time management, whatever. We have a system now that it goes to our Dean of Students office where we file a care report. There has been a shift where we are seeing the emotional dimension coming into the classroom more and more in terms of stress level of juggling jobs, 2 jobs, internships, academic responsibilities, and there is a breakdown. And so I find as a faculty member, I am engaging more on that level to figure out what is going on in their lives. And I think that has become a new reality of the job, and everyone deals with that differently. And how much time, and I'm not trained as a psychologist, I'm not trained in all these ways, but they want more from the professor, it seems, in this area. So engaging in this area is an increasing presence. And I've been at this 10 years at AU. So I'm just curious about, and all of everything that our provost is doing, the RISE initiative where we have a reinventing the student experience, all of this fits into, we as faculty need to pay more attention to this whether we want to or not. And juggling that is become a new reality of the job.
Yeah, I think as much as it's a level of emotional labor that I think some of us get stuck with more than others. So if you're teaching smaller classes, if you're teaching first-year students, if you are teaching, everybody sees it. If you're teaching gen eds, quite honestly, research shows if you're female, students are going, there was a study released earlier this week that the female professors tend to get asked more favors because they are perceived as more accommodating. And the thing is that I have gotten to a point, and I've also been at AU for 10 years, and then I was in grad school here, and I worked at CTRL when it was CTE, is that, what? Yeah, I made coffee there. I think one of the things is that we need to move from a shift of this isn't my job, but also to not do all of the work, and kind of, I guess, without going too much off topic, like I can talk about, let's talk at lunch. I have lots of thoughts.
Also check out, I just did a session on this, the last one, and we put together a ton of resources on this topic. And one of the questions we talked about was, where is the line between appropriate teaching related support and mentoring of students? Where does that line end, and when does it cross over into exceptional service to students?
Yeah. And I think now that there is a care report, and that the Dean of Students office is really trying to amp up their services and to be available for students and for faculty, I think that is helping, because I no longer feel like I do have to shoulder the weight, or that if I'm not the brick wall, who will be? I now have more support, but sometimes even taking the time to do that is difficult.
Yeah, something that I was discussing that was finding that line where you know what's exceptional and what's your actual duty as a faculty member, where like if you can accommodate everybody, like if, oh, I couldn't come to your office hours because I have this interview, so you end up scheduling 20 office hours during the week with extra people and you don't know when it's enough. That's part of something that as a new faculty member I still haven't managed to decide when, okay, I can say no or say whatever. So that's something I would be interested in discussing, having some guidelines.
And I think that varies by individual as well. So, if you're a family person and, you're expected to be home and doing family stuff, at the end of the day, you can't put in as many hours as somebody who may be willing to stay and meet students at 6 o'clock at night.
Oh, I met students at 7. or
Yeah, things like that. So
I don't know,
that varies by.
seems to be too much maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and for some people, they might think that's not too much. Other people would definitely
Yeah.
say that is. So it would vary by individual circumstances. For sure.
I feel like people who don't have children shouldn't be expected to be completely at the mercy of their students. Like I don't actually, I mean, I do have children, but I feel like it's not fair
I don't.
to be like, oh, you haven't got kids, so yeah, you should be here. Like maybe you guys have other things going on in your life.
I think that is often a very real situation. I think it's expected of younger faculty who have more energy, despite the fact that newer faculty may be working additional jobs, because many of them do. Many of them moonlight as bartenders and servers and do freelance work or, you know.
Pick up adjunct classes somewhere else.
Yeah, like whatever the rules may say, like you still have to eat. And I think being able to draw those lines and firmly say, because I have called people out on saying, you know, people who are like, oh, but your schedule's more flexible. And I said, no, I still have as many hours in the day as you do. My choices outside the classroom do not dictate that in the same way that yours do, but that's still my life and my time. And people tend to kind of, I guess, be a little surprised that you actually say that, but then immediately you're kind of like, oh, good point, okay. But with students, I'm like, no, I'm leaving at 5.
I need to learn that line.
I
I'll
or
tattoo my arm so I'll remember.
Yeah.
Don't make excuses, don't explain. I'm
Exactly.
not available.
Yeah, I guess
And I'm really flexible most of the time. I'll Skype with students, like if they have a real question, if they've shown that they'll show up, you know, I am flexible with those things and I don't mind doing that. But that's me and those are my rules.
Yeah.
And I also have to see that the student is actually going to show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or answering questions by email. If I have 70 students and they all send me, oh, this problem, I couldn't solve it. And if you have to answer every one of those, it takes an entire week. So you don't know exactly what's the balance of saying, okay, yes, I need to do this, or just, you know, come to my office hours. That part of it.
Cameron and I were talking about this. There's a guy who writes a teaching column for the Chronicle of Higher Ed who did a whole essay on this and said that he was realizing that more and more frequently students would write him like a real quick, you know, 1 question email, and he was spending an hour writing a response. And he said, I had to wake up. I now say to them, this is a longer conversation, you must come see me in office hours. And often they don't. And like, that's their problem.
That's the other tattoo thing.
Well, so we don't have, oh, sorry.
Yeah. The other thing is, like, I went to this geoscience educators workshop, and they had a suggestion of, like, I never do this that much because I'm not that good of a scheduler, but like getting in your preferred calendar maker and like scheduling all the stuff you actually have to do for your job and other stuff, and like put as best you can, like estimate how much time it takes and like block it out. And then just like have the time that is available for you to deal with students. And if they ask for something outside of that time, unless it's like really exceptional, just be like, sorry, I have a prior commitment, here's when I'm available. And like,
I think if that helps you stick to, or like help you create boundaries and like make sure that you're not spending so much time doing things that shouldn't take necessarily a ton of extra time away. I mean, I think experimenting with those kinds of things is really useful. I don't do that because it just stresses me out to see like all these blocks on my calendar.
I feel the same, but I feel like I have to start saying, sorry, I have a prior commitment.
Yeah.
Even though I don't actually have the calendar.
So
but
what?
it's like easy to be like, oh, I'll like work on that paper like next week and then I'll work on it. You know, like I feel like there's stuff that you can always put off, but if you put it off too long, you're gonna get fired. So
And also, this is the kind of work that we don't account for. You know, there's not a lot of research on this, but the little that's out there. One interesting study said that faculty self-report that they spend 2 to 6% of their working time doing this kind of mentoring with students, whereas actually it's way more than that, and we're not aware of it.
Time trackers like Toggle, TOGGL.com, that are used for freelancers or were made for freelancers and kind of other things where you can kind of create systems to track your time. And that is something that I have started doing. And it's made a huge difference in understanding like what actually takes as much time as I think it does and what's just stressful but feels like it takes more time. And it's been really useful for helping me figure out what to do. But I think because we're running towards the end, one of the things that we wanted to ask you all is, because there's talk of saying, okay, would this work in other schools? Would this work across schools? I don't know how many people are in CAS or in other parts of the university, but I mean, what do you think this would look like? Should it include adjuncts? Because right now it's only open to full-time faculty, either adjuncts or staff who are teaching courses like AUX, because we have a lot of current staff members doing that too. And so there's a lot of potential changes and kind of revisions to the program that I think would be really exciting, but I mean, what do you guys think?
So I actually did teach here as an adjunct before, I guess, transitioning to a full-time position, and I would have benefited greatly from something like this, especially because if you're adjuncting, there's a good chance you're adjuncting elsewhere, and the cultures can be entirely different in the expectations in the classroom, etc. So just these bits that we've gone over would have just been additionally helpful, just understanding like the culture and the expectations and the time and so on and so forth. So.
I'll second that. As an adjunct in 2 schools and a full-time staff member, I would gladly participate if there was space made for people doing my role.
And do you think that the model of other master mentors works with people like adjuncts and staff, or do you think it would be better to have staff and adjuncts who are masters at their type of teaching to be the mentor? What would be your comments on that?
My gut would tell me as we start to parse this out farther and farther, we're getting smaller and smaller pools, and that may become exhausted pretty quickly. So from my perspective, okay, I teach in the Department of Government, and I'm about to start teaching in SIS as well, and I'm a CTRL and full-time staff member. So you know, my entrance to SIS now with this is, you know, I'm seeing a lot of those students also in the Department of Government, but it's a different mindset and different, and so a little bit with, you know, as I move to a new type of class, it'll be a graduate class, it'll be, you know, different topics than what I'm used to teaching, and so it might be, I forget who said the phrase earlier, but that sort of, not crisis mentoring, but at least, you know, there's the general mentoring, but it's also this transitional mentoring of why I was looking for it in that specific moment.
I think the only impetus is resources. The way this was originally set up, it was a commitment of resources by the CAS Dean's Office, and CTRL did some matching, and the Provost's Office appealed to the other schools, and the deans, for whatever reason, didn't have resources available or didn't think there was enough interest from their faculty to commit them. But if this was a commitment from, you know, the academic affairs budget that was made available widely to faculty, I think a lot of people around campus would take advantage of it.
But do you think there's something to incentivize the mentors? I think the mentees may be very willing, but I wonder.
Well, that's why the resources is an issue, because I don't know if we're still doing this, but we made a commitment from the beginning to offer stipends to the mentors. Which I think is really important.
Stipends, but something in the way of the way they are evaluated or appreciated, or something that this counts, that is valued.
Well, Elena, the learning experience for me is worth more than the stipend that I get. Definitely so.
Yeah. I have a suggestion. I wonder if you've tapped into all the resources that are available on campus. Let me just throw out an idea here. It's blue sky. In the School of Public Affairs, there's the Executive Leadership Program. And the way in which some of those programs are structured, where they actually teach federal government employees, they use a coaching system. So what does this mean? It means that there are a set of instructors that teach a curriculum that's been developed. But then there's also a set of coaches that deal with the personal growth, career enhancement aspects, managing stress, holistically, how do you grow? That is a model that to try to get at the resource question, if you have programs like this that already exist on campus, couldn't you hire those programs to help you with your mentor-mentee kind of situation here where you've got a ready-made trained coaching staff. And I don't know anything about coaching, but it seems to, I've heard good things about this, where then you can actually tap into those people that may fit into this in some way. Just a thought.
And I know that some programs have formal mentoring programs. Some units have formal mentoring programs, like the writing program. New people get assigned people. Others have informal systems, but they've been in existence for a long time. And so we have people who are essentially master mentors from many years of experience who could be used in other places.
And sometimes the informal, I come from the School of Communication, the informal may or may not be the best approach if it's not structured in some way. So I don't know, for example, like the School of Communication, how many people, how many of our faculty there know that they could go to CTRL and try to apply for something like this, because it's not limited just to CAS, right? You're trying to broaden it. So now it's only CAS.
Yeah.
Well, there would certainly be interest, particularly among third-term faculty members when you're juggling a higher course load and, there's a lot of possibility.
I have numerous questions, but one is, what have been the challenges and what kinds of resistance to participating have you encountered? And also, what have been any extrinsic rewards for you? I guess you get a stipend, you build a relationship that's probably mostly internal. Have there been any opportunities to put this on your CV or talk about it publicly and feel like it is recognized and appreciated? 3 questions.
Very quickly, the extrinsic, I haven't had the opportunity to use this outside of AU, but it's definitely on my CV, and it's definitely an important part of my annual service commitment that I do.
So it gets recognized.
You're really good at that.
Oh, you bet.
Oh,
It's got to be self-promoted, right? So it's got to be on there. And
No,
so
not
that-
just self-promoted, but getting your service recognized and setting boundaries on that service.
Yeah, I learned how to say no. It takes a while, but you've got to learn how to do that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'm going to drop that to do that, and you start to do that sort of juggling that comes later. And like I said, the stipend, it helps. It's nice to know someone appreciates it, but the amount of extra value that I get out of the relationships I have with my mentees far outstrips the small amount of money that would be given to you, which gets taxed, and you don't even know it's there, really. It'd be nicer if you got it in donuts, it's like, it'd be more functional in that regard. So there is that. And what was the first question?
Challenges or resistors to the program?
Resistors.
People or pockets within the CAS
Since
that don't
people have to
participate?
apply, I don't know if there are, I wonder sometimes if CAS does a good enough job publicizing it. I think.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
When I saw the session, I was like, oh, it's good to know that's still going on, that program that I helped set up 4 years ago.
People in my department didn't know anything. I think we have another lit person in the program this year, but like people kind of knew about it as something CAS was doing, but then were surprised to hear that I was doing it my second year, and so that became one of those moments of like, I need to like amp up the promotion on that one. Yeah, so I don't think there's active resistance by any means. I think perhaps it's not encouraged as much as it could be. I do think the fact that you have to apply to be a part of it makes it a desirable thing. Even if we don't have enough mentors to go around, if anything, that probably makes it more intriguing. I think more people should be mentoring. I don't think that should in fact be it shouldn't be that way.
And if I was running it, if I was in charge of the money, I'd give the mentee the stipend too. That would be an incentive.
And if I was running it, I would, to get more tenured faculty members involved, I would shift the credit from service to teaching. Because there's absolutely zero incentive for a tenured faculty member at an associate level to get involved as a mentor. zero incentive. The money's not enough and the time commitment is way too onerous if you're trying to go up for the next promotion.
Yeah, I primarily do it as an altruistic thing for out-of-term faculty. I never had it when I turned up here. I do it for term faculty. I also do it, I also get appointed non-term mentees, and I'm happy to do that. But I feel really deeply that this is something I should be doing for term faculty at this institution.
I get
That's
that,
what I
and
do.
just changing that language around where it fits in, by calling it service as opposed to teaching, it's really teaching. It's really teaching. It's not, it's more than service.
How do you recruit and choose the mentors for the program?
I don't know. They ask me every year, I say yes.
Yeah, I got an email from the woman that was running it 2 years ago. I think she had gotten my name from someone in my program. I feel like I'm lucky because my program has a long history of mentoring, which is really wonderful and unique, but because it's within your program, you're constantly kind of like, am I doing something wrong? Is someone gonna like tattle on me, even though that's not really the culture? And so when someone said, oh, you've been doing this a lot in the program, why don't you take it up to the college level? I was like, great, cool. I mean, that sounds great. I'd love to do that. Get me out of the program for a little bit.
I think initially, Lauren, just a list of potential faculty were just contacted who would be interested in that.
It was kind of word of mouth. I mean, at that point, Noemí was running CTRL, and she was a long time tenured full professor in CAS, and I think she and the dean just sat down and said, oh, let's come up with a list of people. Because it was so small, you know, I think maybe we had, what, a handful of mentors the first year?
Yeah.
So that's actually a really good question for going forward.
I mean, I think we need to leave, we
Yeah,
need to do
I
the,
think we're just wrap up.
if you would finish up the survey. But I think, you know, if you have questions that come up that didn't get answered today, like we are all available. Please do not hesitate to contact us. Email, in person. I think we're all kind of happy to talk more about it. And I think we would love your feedback, especially as we try to kind of rethink what this program might look like as it changes.
Yeah, if you're fired up enough to instigate this in another college or another institution, and you want information about how you might set that up, please get in touch. We can get you in touch with people if we don't know.
Thank you.